Izuku Shigaraki by Fangirl48 on AO3. Chapter 7. Interlude: A Brother's Feelings. One for All thanked the doctor with clenched teeth and hung up his phone. After sensing Izuku, he had put the notice to anyone in his organization that worked in the police or medical field to be on the lookout for his long-thought-dead sibling. Though no one knew exactly who they were searching for, just that the boy was to be delivered to All for One as soon as possible, alive and unharmed. Of course, the symbol of evil could have asked Tomuro or Kurogiri to join the search. However, Tomuro was ecstatic, to say the least, and Hisashi didn't want either of them hurt. Given Izuku's percentage for combination of fighting and flight and Tomuro's destructive nature, there was an excellent chance they would hurt each other, or worse. And asking any villain under his control ran the risk of drawing unwanted attention from the heroes. Not to mention the more foolish villains might think capturing Izuku would be an excellent way to make a bid for power. Unfortunately, it happened more than once when Tomuro was young, and there was no way that Hisashi would risk anything like that happening again. This was especially so after the last time Tomuro still had the scar from his attackers, despite Hisashi's many healing quirks. No, All for One had to find his baby brother as quickly as possible. Izuku was probably so scared and confused right now. The world has changed so much in the last 200 years, and as strong as he was, Izuku was just as fragile. Hisashi wasn't going to make the same mistake again like he had with Tomuro, thinking he would be safe once he had his own quirk. How naive had he been back then? One for All dug his nails into the soft padding of his chair, lost in the sea of memories and paranoid thoughts. What if Izuku was hurt? What if he was already in the hands of a hero? What if he was dead? Hisashi only had a connection with Izuku for a split second before it faded away. Could his mind possibly be failing or tricking him due to his injury? This was All Might's fault. Hisashi raged, bitterly, slamming his hand down at the mere thought of that smiling idiot. All Might, and all the other sneaky little thieves like him passing along Tomuro's quirk as if it belonged to them. Tomuro's quirk was his. It was the only thing he had left of his brother. Who were they to keep the last thing Hisashi had of his brother in this world from him? Sensei? A raspy voice whispered. Master, Kurogiri concerned voice followed. Are you feeling all right? Should I call the doctor? Hisashi felt 4 fingers gripping the cuffs of his jacket and smiled, letting the rage leave as his body knowing it was young Tomura. Reaching up, Hisashi blindly placed his hand on the other boy's head, frowning slightly, greasy feeling of it, and sighing. I see you've been up all night playing video games again, Hisashi chuckled, using one of his intellect quirks and seeing Tomura's cheeks heat up. You really should take care of yourself, Tomura. Sorry, Sensei. Hisashi smiled slightly and ruffled the younger man's hair again. When he had first come across young Tiko Shimura in that alleyway, it struck him just how much he looked like Tomura. Hisashi wondered if the similarities in their appearances were because Nana got pregnant when she carried One for All. It certainly explained decay. A mutated version of Nana's biological father's dehydration quirk combined with the remnants of One for All that Kotaro Shimura carried down with him. Young Taiko's awakening to this power and accidentally killing his whole family unknowingly ended up drawing Hisashi's attention. He had followed the small embers of his brother's quirk to the boy, thinking perhaps Tiko was All Might's successor. Instead of killing him, though, Hisashi reached out his hands after seeing the condition Tenko had been in and never looked back. Though he did feel some satisfaction knowing that the news could definitely be a delirious blow to All Might's ego. But plans started to change a little more each day as Hisashi felt like fate had given him another chance of having a son, especially when he learned that Tokuro shared the same birthday as Mikuro. Hisashi never once thought of Tokuro as a replacement for his lost son, but instead was his new son, altogether one that he would protect, no matter what the cost. Hisashi had even bestowed on him the name Tomuro in honor of his brother, though he told the boy it was because the name meant to mourn, rather than the truth behind it. The Shigaraki matriarch had been a cruel woman when naming her sons, and as such, Hisashi felt it only proper to take advantage of that cruelty for himself. Sensei, Tomuro's voice came again, snapping All for One out of his thoughts. Forgive me, Tomura. I'm just a little tired, the man assured his student/adopted son. I think I'll take a nap before our lesson this evening. Why don't you return to the bar with Kuroguri and do the same? Tonight, if all goes well, your present will be ready for you, and we could stay the next stage of your training. Although he couldn't see it, All for One knew his son was smiling at the thought of getting his very own Nomu. The pair wished the man over him a pleasant sleep, before leaving in one of Kuroguri's warp gates. Hisashi really did hate keeping secrets from Tomuro. Still, for now, the boy was safe, remaining in the darks about All for One's search for Izuku. Computer, Hisashi spoke into the mic near his mouth. Pull up file MAS01 and play. Not a second later, Hisashi heard the sounds of Izuku's giggling. Even though he was unable to see the video anymore, Hisashi had every detail of the footage engraved into his memory. The sound of the doctor cracking open, followed by a jubilant "surprise" from the both young Shigaraki brothers, played on the screen, as All for One's younger self looked at the camera. Hisashi heard himself sush the pair sternly. Keep it down, Inko's sleeping. Sorry, Hichi. Izuku laughed. The camera came in hands, shaking from excitement. The frame rested on Inko. Her eyes opened, and she raised one finger to her lip so that her husband would know she was already awake. Can we see him? Izuku, Tomuro scolded lightly, from where he stood in front of the hospital issue basket. Keep your voice down. The camera quickly moved to look at Hisashi's exhausted face. Is that him? Yes, you could hear the foolish young self say as he walked over to the baskets, camera zooming in on the newborn. Tomuro, Izuku, I want you to meet your new nephew. Mikuru Akatani. You're giving him Inko's last name, Tomuro's voice spoke as the camera zoomed in on the sleeping baby's face. The peaceful face would then scrunch up a little as Izuku ran his fingers, came into the frame, running over the downy black hair he had inherited from Inko. We both know I'm not too popular for my position on power these days, Hisashi answered. Inko's last name is safer, and thankfully less known. Boys, a tired voice came from the bed as Inko opened her beautiful brownish red eyes, full to look at the brothers. No shop talk. Yes, dear, both Hisashi said together. Oh my god, that was a chapter. This is going to be long. I'm going to go on a small tangent on writing because I just need to praise this author's writing. So first we're going to talk about the characterization of All for One. Okay, All for One in the anime, in the manga, and like everywhere is this cruel, kind of, not psychotic, no. Cruel, unempathetic, uncaring, horrible human who has no human empathy, right? You see them as this absolute horrible being, which works, right? It works because it gives you that, he works as the type of character that it needs to be, which is the infamous foe that seems unstoppable. And for that to really come to fruition, you don't need the character to be developed fully, right? Some villains, you do need them to be developed. You need to hear the story. You need to know the context. You have to make them less of a two-dimensional character and more of a three-dimensional character with wants, needs, stuff like that, right? Other than just, I want this, blink. It's, I want this, but then there's this, and right? Like, you need to build on the characters, right? For example, Shigaraki, that's a big example, right? Him. You need to know the context of how he became to be the Shigaraki we know now, the one with the decay quirk, the one that literally hates everybody, because guess what? We're most likely gonna have like a whole scene with him and stuff like that, right? We need to know that information, and right, and that works, right? But it also works with One For All being, you know, this infamous foe who has no want other than destruction and taking over power and just being manipulative, which works. It works. We don't need to know more, right? But in this fanfic, we do need more, because he's no longer just the villain. He is the brother of Izuku. That small role change is what needed him to be more characterized. And I love that the author is doing that. I love that the author is giving him like more development. He has a son, right? Sure, when he took in the second Tomuro, not the brother, but his adoptive son, Shigaraki, right? When he took him in, right, it was less of a, I want you to be like my brother or like my new adoptive son, right? It was more of, I'm gonna use you, right? I'm gonna use you. And then it turned to, wait, hold up. You're my son now. I love you. You staying with me, right? It gives that three-dimensional relationship, right? And it's just, oh my god, I love it. I love it so much. I love the characterization and humanization of All For One, because it works in this fanfic, and it needs to be there for this fanfic to fully function and fully work. Because if Izuku's brother was just a villain, no empathy, no humanity whatsoever, it would not be a compelling point in the story, right? Because, oh, clearly Izuku has to hate him now, because he has no empathy anymore. He is soulless. He is evil. There is no desire to love him because he's horrible. Why would you love someone that's horrible? Which, yeah, you could paint a picture with that, but it wouldn't be as impactful. Like, you could paint a picture with, like, oh, Izuku still loves him, but, like, oh my god, he's such a horrible person, and he's latching on to, like, his past self. That would be compelling, right? But not as compelling as he still has humanity left. Like, oh my god, like, it becomes a big gray slob. And I know some people don't like gray slobs, aka gray characters, aka morally ambiguous stuff, right? I personally love it. I eat that shit up lunch, breakfast, and dinner. I'm sorry, but oh my god. Gray characters, gray scenes, gray. My favorite color. It's not my favorite color. My favorite color is black and white. Anyways, not together. That would make gray. I meant like my favorite colors are black and white, not black and white like stripes. Anyways, sorry. But yeah, that's what makes it compelling. It's ambiguous. Morally, like, some people would lean, obviously in gray scenarios and gray characters, some people would lean more towards one side than the other, and then there's some people who would lean straight dap in the middle, right? In this situation, right, it's the whole situation of, like, should Izuku love his brother anymore? Because he's clearly done so many wrong things. Is he forgivable? And the second thing is, depending on what Izuku does, is like the outcome. And it's, I love this. This is, and the pacing of this. Can we just talk about that? Oh my god, I'm going on a long tangent, but I do not care. The pacing. Can we just talk about that? Having this chapter right after yesterday's chapter, Izuku finding out that he is a horrible person, right? The whole, oh, he's killed many, he is manipulative, blah, 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 and Izuku being like, the way he reacted is amazing. The whole running out, the whole not believing it, it makes sense. When you grow up with a sibling or with a family member, it's hard to come to terms with that person being anything but what you imagine them to be. You don't want to believe that the person that you've trusted, that you've loved unconditionally, is a horrible person. It's why people stay in abusive relationships sometimes. You don't want to believe that this person is a horrible person. You want to keep that person's image in your head good, right? It's sad, but it's the reality. And I just love how Izuku reacted. And to have this chapter right after that, that is impactful. We are now seeing, okay, we know why Izuku reacted the way he did. Izuku is seeing him in a different picture. He's not seeing him as this evil villain, malicious, right? Which obviously we already knew that. He's seeing him as a brother. But now we get the fuller, bigger picture. He's not only seeing him as a brother, he's seeing him as a brother who cares about his brothers, who would protect the people he loves, who had a son and a wife who he cared dearly about, right? It's not just that he is a brother. He's more than just a brother, right? He is loving, he's caring, and we're seeing that. And we're now, not empathizing. I'm trying to find my words. We are now understanding Izuku's point of view when it comes to his oldest brother. And that is impactful, and I love that this chapter was given here. If this chapter was given before the, the reveal, it wouldn't have worked. And here's why. Because we would have already known that, and then it would have hit Izuku leaving, and it wouldn't be as impactful, right? It would be like, oh, okay, right? And it would wash over us. But now, with it being after, right, we get hit. We're like, hold up. Okay, Izuku thinks of his brother in a certain way. And you're left wondering, what is that way? And that intrigues you. That builds up suspense. That is the difference in between pacing and placement. Depending on where you place storylines and stuff like that, it builds up intention. It builds up excitement. It builds up something. It sets the foundations. And this is setting a lot of foundations. I could tell that these last two chapters are foundation setters. Not saying that chapters or episodes or just, stuff like that, like foundation building, is horrible. Foundation building is very important and could be very entertaining and very purposeful. For example, these two are foundation builders, right? But that does not mean that these two chapters weren't any good than any of the others. Personally, I think these two chapters are the best chapters so far. I've loved them so much. I've been going on a rant for 9 minutes. I'm gonna stop it here. But yeah, I just want to praise, if the author is watching this right now, hi, I really love your work. It's very intriguing, and I love the way you pace your stuff. I love the way you block out your story, because so far it's been really good, and I could tell that you've put a lot of intention behind it. And if you haven't, if you're just like those type of writers who just sit and then write, you are naturally talented then. But either way, I feel that you are doing an amazing job at this story, and I'm loving it so far. I think this is my favorite. So far, this is definitely going on my bookmarks. I am definitely gonna reread this later and annotate the fuck out of it, because I annotate my fanfics. I'm like that. I annotate my fanfics, I annotate my books. Sue me. As always, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds, have a wonderful day or night. Join our community Discord server, link is in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.